My son Noah's 10th birthday was supposed to be the night he felt like the most important person in the room at the city's most exclusive seafood lounge. Instead, it became the night my sister-in-law looked me in the eye and treated me like staff. The private dining room glittered with imported crystal and overpriced champagne. 6 of her influencer friends, none of whom had been invited, were already posing for photos, their smiles sharp and hollow. Noah walked in carrying his small birthday cake, proud and glowing. Heather didn't even glance at him. She physically moved him out of the center chair, the birthday chair, without a flicker of shame. Then she looked at me and snapped, "Marian, get that cheap cake out of my background. Tell the waiter we need more chairs. And put your card down for this table. Consider it your rent for being part of this family." I felt the words land like a slap. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat and curled my fists under the mahogany table until my knuckles went white. Then I stood, took Noah's hand, wished her a lovely evening and walked out through the heavy oak doors. Not in defeat. In calculation. I coordinate elite corporate events for a living. When a CEO's private helicopter gets grounded an hour before a global launch, I fix it. I manage million-dollar crises without blinking. But the most exhausting crisis I've ever handled wasn't a client. It was Heather. At 43, she's still the untouchable golden child. She floats around in runway labels, acting like the city belongs to her. But strip away the designer fabric and you'll find maxed-out credit cards, payday loans, and my husband's quiet, bleeding guilt keeping her afloat. Last year she stole $2,000 from our family vacation fund. She called sobbing about a foreclosure emergency. 2 days later she was posting spa selfies with champagne flutes and ocean views. When I confronted my in-laws, they shrugged. "Family helps family," they said. "Don't be dramatic." They laughed at my boundaries. They had no idea that their laughter was writing today's bill. Heather didn't hijack Noah's birthday out of pure cruelty. She was drowning. She had promised her influencer friends an ultra-exclusive dinner so they'd tag her and secure her a sponsored brand trip to Cabo. Her own accounts were frozen. Her husband's cards were getting declined all over town. My corporate reservation was her last desperate gamble. He assumed I would stay silent. That I'd slide my company card across the table like I always did. That I'd swallow the cost to keep the peace. She mistook patience for weakness. Back in the main dining room she was performing. "We'll take 2 grand plateaus," she announced before the water glasses were filled. "The ones with lobster and caviar. And 3 bottles of your best vintage champagne. Keep them coming." She leaned toward her friends, making sure their phones were recording. "Don't hold back, girls. My sister-in-law's picking up the tab. She just plans little parties for a living, but she loves to treat us." They giggled, raising empty glasses to the camera. At the end of the table my mother-in-law, Elizabeth, sat stiff and pale, staring at the prices on the menu like they were written in blood. A moment later she grabbed my elbow and pulled me into the dim hallway near the restrooms. Her nails pressed into my skin. "Marian, please," she whispered, eyes shining with panic. "I know Heather is out of line. I know she is. But she's struggling right now. Just be the bigger person. Put it on your card and let it go. We cannot make a scene in front of these people. Please. Do it to protect the family." I looked at her. For 10 years, this woman had asked me to shrink myself to protect her daughter's ego. Something inside me went quiet. The guilt. The obligation. The reflex to absorb the damage. It evaporated. "You only use the word family when you want me to swallow poison," I said calmly. My voice echoed off the tile. "You want me to buy her a $3,500 dinner while my 10-year-old son gets pushed out of his own birthday seat?" Elizabeth opened her mouth, tears spilling over, ready to argue. But this time I wasn't the one about to bend. I stepped closer to Elizabeth, forcing her to meet my eyes. "Tonight," I said quietly, "I would rather be the villain protecting my son than the bigger person feeding a parasite." I slipped my arm from her grip and walked straight to the hostess stand. Marcus, the general manager, looked up immediately. In my world, relationships are currency. I route tens of thousands of dollars in corporate dinners through his restaurant every quarter. He knows my name. He knows my standards. And he knows what my company account represents. I nodded toward the quieter alcove near the kitchen, and he followed without hesitation. "No theatrics. No family drama. Just logistics." "Marcus," I said evenly, The private room reservation is moving downstairs to the chef's wine cellar. Just my husband, my son, and our actual invited guests." His eyes flickered briefly toward the spectacle Heather was creating upstairs. "And table 4? He asked carefully. "Walk-in party," I replied. "Separate check. Add the mandatory 20% gratuity for large groups. Do not authorize a single cent to my account. If they attempt to charge it to me, you decline it immediately." He gave a crisp, professional nod. Message received. I gathered Matthew, Noah, and our real friends from the lobby and led them down the spiral staircase. With every step, the noise from upstairs faded into a dull, distant hum. The chef's cellar felt like a sanctuary. Warm lighting. Aged oak barrels. The scent of roasted garlic and fresh herbs drifting from the kitchen. The staff brought down Noah's cake, lit the candles, and when everyone sang, my 10-year-old finally smiled. Not the polite, confused smile from earlier. A real one. For the first time that night, he looked like the center of his own celebration. I leaned back in my leather chair and sipped my water slowly. Downstairs there was laughter and warmth. Upstairs the clock was running. Every oyster Heather ordered. Every bottle of vintage champagne she demanded for the camera. Each one quietly tightening the noose around her illusion. At exactly 9:15 p.m., the waiter placed a thick black leather folder in the center of table 4. $3,500. I stepped back upstairs and positioned myself near the hostess stand, just within view. Heather laughed when she saw the total, a brittle, high-pitched sound. She snapped the folder open, barely scanning the receipt before pulling a gold credit card from her wallet and dropping it onto the tray with dramatic confidence. The waiter slid it into the terminal. Beep. Declined. Her fingers twitched. "Oh, that's just a bank glitch," she muttered, already digging into her purse. She produced a second card and handed it over with forced nonchalance. Beep. Declined. A thin sheen of sweat appeared along her hairline. Her foundation, once flawless under the lights, now looked dry and uneven. Kevin sat motionless beside her, staring at his empty plate as if it might offer divine intervention. Heather pulled a third card from the back of her wallet, her hand visibly shaking now. She thrust it toward the waiter. Beep. Declined. This time there was no laughter. Only silence. Lexi, the lead influencer with the million-follower smirk, stared at the third red light flashing on the terminal. She let out a derisive laugh, sharp, brittle, completely unconcerned. Digging into her designer clutch, she pulled out a single crumpled $20 bill and tossed it onto the stained tablecloth. "You're broke," she sneered, lips curling in utter contempt. "Pathetic." Without another word, she grabbed her coat and stormed for the exit. Her thumb was already flying across her phone screen, blocking Heather on every social media platform before her ride even hit the curb. The remaining 5 girls scattered like roaches in the dark, muttering excuses about babysitters and early flights, practically tripping over each other to escape the chaos. Within a minute, Heather and Kevin were left alone, holding a $3,500 bill like a live grenade. Heather whipped her head toward me, eyes wide, panic exploding into raw, unfiltered rage. "Marion," she screamed, her voice cracking, shattering the polished calm of the upscale dining room. "Get over here right now and fix this." I stepped forward, calmly approaching the edge of the table. My gaze swept over the mountain of empty oyster shells, the drained champagne bottles, and the sheer terror settling into her wide, desperate eyes. "That $3,500 I refused to pay? It's now sitting in a high-yield college savings account for Noah. Have you ever had to choose between cutting off toxic family or letting them drain you completely? Share your story in the comments. If you've ever had to become the villain just to protect your peace, hit subscribe. I'm Marion and my tab is permanently closed. I know exactly what you're thinking. Why did you let her steal $2,000 from your vacation fund without calling the cops the first time? Why bail her out for years? From the outside it looks simple. But Marion wasn't stupid. She was trapped in what behavioral psychologists call the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. Toxic family members and entitled golden children don't treat you like garbage all the time. Every once in a while they hand you a crumb, a fake apology, a decent holiday dinner, a fleeting moment of kindness. You keep feeding them your time, energy, and money, hoping for the jackpot of genuine love. You are not weak. You are addicted to the illusion that they will change. But when that illusion finally shatters, you pivot. And that's exactly what Marian did at the seafood lounge. Step 1. The audit strategy. Entitled people thrive in gray areas, saying things like, "Just put it on the tab, we'll sort it later," or "Don't worry about the numbers." Marian destroyed that gray area. She intercepted the manager and forced a separate check. She demanded an itemized bill, a clear line of responsibility. Parasites panic under a magnifying glass. They can't survive transparency. Step 2. Executing from safety. When Heather showed up at her house the next morning, Marian didn't confront her directly. She let her high-definition security system do the work. No physical confrontation, no risk. Just a clear, unassailable defensive line. Marian didn't just defend herself financially, she rewrote the rules entirely. She turned her home, her time, and her boundaries into armor. And in doing so, she reclaimed her life. Marian used the two-way audio to keep Heather talking while simultaneously capturing time-stamped video evidence. Proof that the police could use the second they arrived. In real life, anger doesn't get convictions, but hard digital evidence does. Finally, Marian let Heather face the consequences. 4 years her in-laws had begged her to cover the bills, to keep the peace. But Marian realized that stepping back and letting Heather crash on her own $3,500 disaster was the ultimate investment in her freedom. Sometimes, the cheapest and most effective way to remove a toxic person from your life is to let them bankrupt themselves. Here's the takeaway. Your bank account is not a rehabilitation center for someone else's bad choices. Protecting your peace isn't petty, it's survival. If you're funding someone else's fake reality, it's time to close the account and draw the line. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to use the audit strategy on a toxic family member? Did you finally separate the checks in your own life? Share your experiences in the comments. Your story might give someone else the courage to take their own stand. If this breakdown gave you clarity today, hit subscribe. Stay smart. Protect your peace.